We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Wednesday afternoon edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, here on a Wednesday, we got a lot to talk about. I think Wednesdays going forward, we might go a little bit earlier just because there is so much that happens on these Tuesday nights. But we got ourselves a loaded show. So first of all, Arkansas star player Boogie Fland out for the year. Some of you are questioning what's really going on. I'll tell you what I know, what I think for Arkansas, what this means. It goes without saying it is not good. Also from there, you know what we got to talk about next. The Dan Hurley, the latest tirade. He's yelling, he's screaming. He's telling the refs, don't you walk away from me. I'm the best coach in college basketball. There is a lot to peel back there. I want to play some interesting sound because I think maybe if you hear some stuff, it'll change your perspective. We'll talk about Louisville. I think they're the best story in college basketball right now. 15-5, second place in the ACC. Pat Kelsey is my national coach of the year. And finally, we will wrap. 5-star Caleb Wilson does commit on Thursday. I've covered this a lot, and I do think there's some new information that is worth discussing. By the way, we have moved into a new studio space, so if the video, if the audio is no good or if there are issues, please let us know. But we're rocking, we're rolling, we're having fun. And we have a lot to discuss. Before we get started, as a quick reminder, please make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We're closing in on 50,000 subscribers. Listen, if you love somebody that loves college sports, especially around this time of year, college basketball, I don't think anybody covers it better than Torres does. Make sure to tag them, to share with them, have them subscribe because we are closing in on 50,000 subscribers. I need to get there, and I need your support to do it. Speaking of support, should mention, by the way, we're heading towards March. If you are a small business owner, if you know small businesses or big businesses, we are going to be doing some very cool stuff from the advertising perspective. We'll be on the ground at a lot of these events. So hit me up, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. Would love to talk to you about advertising opportunities with the show. We reach hundreds of thousands of people a month, millions of people a year. We want you to be part of the Aaron Torres Pod experience. You know who is part of the Aaron Torres Pod experience? Our friends, our partners, Callie Puffs and CalliePuffs.com. Okay, so I've told you Callie Puffs' story, but it's that time of year. It's the new year, new you. You're trying to get healthy. You're trying to eat right. You're trying to drink less. You're trying not to be like Torres and actually make it through dry January. But you're also thinking about what goes into your body. How can you be healthier? How can you be more responsible? How can you be smarter? And well, I'll tell you what, Callie Puffs is a great way to go. Okay, so Callie Puffs, I've told you about them before, but they are a family-owned company not far from where I live. Joey, the owner, is a football fan, and basically he started this company basically because like you and I, he was kind of watching games on TV. He has small children. He said, I need something healthy for my kids, but I need something healthy for myself. And that's how he came up with Callie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. And the best part is these things freaking taste delicious, okay? And so at this point, you don't need to take my word for it, but try them out for yourself. You're going to love them. For more information, flavors, how to get them, all that good stuff, visit CalliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com. Also, make sure to check them out on Amazon. You're on Amazon, you're searching, you're looking, you're buying stuff for friends, for family, for whatever. Well, guess what? You can also get Callie Puffs on Amazon as well. Just search Callie Puffs on Amazon. Try them there. You'll like them. You'll appreciate them. You'll enjoy them. Tell them Torres sent you. Thank you to Callie Puffs. We do appreciate their support. With that said, it is certainly a busy Wednesday, really in the world of college basketball. There is no more time to waste, so let's get into it. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, you don't need me to tell you. I mean, we could actually start in a few different directions, but where I do want to start is with news that broke on late Tuesday night involving Arkansas star Boogie Fland. Okay, so Arkansas, listen, we don't need to relitigate everything, but it's been a disappointing year. It's been a frustrating year. With the loss to Missouri on Saturday, Arkansas fell to 11-7. They lost their 5th straight game to open SEC play. You don't need me to tell you all of that. It's been disappointing. I feel bad for Arkansas fans with how things are going, yet they somehow got worse on Tuesday night because John Rothstein, CBS Sports, was the first to report that Boogie Fland, Arkansas's starting point guard, second leading scorer, if you believe the mock drafts, the best NBA prospect on this team, he has a hand injury. He is out for the year. And you just talk about a piece of news that Arkansas could not afford to have. Yeah, they got it. It's bad news. And this is just the season from hell from Arkansas. Arkansas fans, if you're watching, I feel so bad for you guys. I was a believer in the preseason. It has not gone to plan. Everybody's frustrated. Everybody's disappointed. But let's go ahead and dive in, okay? And so as far as this injury is concerned, let's go ahead and dive in. One, it was interesting. John Calipari actually did address this after the game against Missouri. I did not have producer Matt pull the video, but basically Calipari said something to the effect of, Boogie's hand has been messed up. We got to get it looked at. And so that was kind of the first inclination that something might not be right. But I don't think anybody expected season-ending injury, potentially season-ending surgery. And let me right off the bat just kill, let me get on the elephant in the room and let's just kill this narrative forever, okay? Because the second that I saw this news, I saw a lot of people, and we know probably which fan base most of them were from, saying that Boogie Fland is faking an injury. He's protecting his draft stock. The team stinks. He wants to protect himself, doesn't want to hurt his draft stock. I'll be honest. So I don't believe it. And I think the argument for that would be, well, the team stinks. He's going to protect himself. Also, he's playing well at this individual time. Here's a couple reasons I don't believe it. First of all, Calipari did address this injury after the game against Missouri. Two, let's be honest, like Boogie Fland is a great NBA draft prospect. This isn't Zion Williamson. This isn't Cooper Flagg. This isn't somebody that is a surefire top 5 pick, top 2 pick, top 1 pick. That was what made the Zion Williamson conversation so interesting when it happened. He got hurt, and he was the clear-cut number 1 pick. There was nothing he could do to improve his draft stock, and so that was the argument that he shouldn't keep playing. But 3, here's the other thing. I think there's a lot of people that said, well, Calipari said he heard it in the Florida game, then he played 2 games after, and there's no way that he just had this injury this whole time, and da-da-da-da. And it's like, well, listen, I'm not a doctor. Believe it or not, I know, hosted a podcast on a Wednesday afternoon. Stunning that I don't have a medical degree, okay? But what I will say is I've been following sports long enough to know, like, these injuries can happen, and you can be playing through something more serious than you realize. And you just, you think you think you could play through pain. You think you have a pain threshold. Then you go to a doctor. Then you go for an MRI, and you realize it's much worse than it actually is. I mean, we've heard of stories of players playing with broken feet before, right? I mean, listen, I hate to be, negative here, but like Sam Bowie, like maybe the most famous draft bust ever. Like, it all started, he hurt his foot, thought it was fine, played through it. Turns out he was playing like 20 games or something on a broken foot. So injuries can happen if it is a hand, if it is a wrist. I mean, again, not a doctor, but we can all see a lot of bones, a lot of whatever in that area of your body that you could think, oh, it's minor, it's not a big deal, it's just a little sore, it's a little swelling. Go get an MRI and you realize, oh, wait, that's actually way worse than I realized. So I don't believe that this is some sort of made-up injury. I've actually been told, and we'll find out Wednesday night when Arkansas takes the court again against Georgia, I've actually been told he's going in for surgery. And this is not like a fake surgery. Like, I think he'll be on the sidelines, if he's in the sidelines tonight, with padding on his injured hand. And I don't think this is fake. I don't think this is made up. But I think there's a few conversations to have now that we know that he's gone. First of all, listen, I think a lot of things are out of a lot of people's control. But I will say, part of this, again, I don't want to blame Calipari, but part of this is on Cal. And this is a conversation that I know Arkansas fans have had the last couple days is, listen, Cal took a very calculated risk over the summer when he basically only took 9 scholarship players. Now, I know they have some players that are on scholarship or whatever, but basically he was like, we're going with 9. we're playing with 3 guards, 3 wings, 3 bigs. I think everybody knows who they are, but DJ Wagner, Nelly Davis, and Boogie Fland at guard. On the wing, it's Carter Knox, it's Adu Thiero, and it's Billy Richmond. And then the bigs are Big Z, Jonas Adu, and also on top of that, Trevin Brazil. And Coach Cal was basically, we're not adding any more bodies to that. And I defended him at the time. I still understand why he did it. If you remember back last year with Kentucky, had some off-season injuries going into his final year at Kentucky. Aaron Bradshaw actually broke his foot. Agana Nyenso hurt himself, and so he had to add Trey Mitchell. He had to add Big Z. And then as the season goes on, all of a sudden it's the end of the year. You have 11 healthy players that all want to play, and you still can't figure out rotations, etc. So I understood why he did it, but I think we also understood at the same time that there was going to be essentially no real wiggle room if things went sideways. And so things have gone sideways. Injury happens. And I think the disappointing thing for me is, look, I do think that the back was against the wall. It was going to be an uphill battle just to get an NCAA tournament bid after an 0-5 start. But I will say this was kind of the part of the schedule where I said, okay, if something positive can happen, this is going to be it. If you go back a week and a half ago, I said that LSU game last Tuesday night or last Wednesday night or whenever it was, said that's the most important game on the schedule. You win that. At the time, Arkansas was 0-3 in league play. Well, listen, you're 1-3 at that point. You get some momentum. Missouri's a good team, but then you have Georgia and Oklahoma at home before you go to Lexington. And so even if Boogie Fland was healthy, the backs were going to be against the wall once you don't beat LSU. The LSU game to me was the one that I just said, look, that changes everything. That changes the entire conversation about this team, because now if you can't beat LSU, you're going to struggle against a lot of good teams. You lose to Missouri, you're 0-5, and then you're sitting at 0-5 in league play, 11-7 overall. Now, all of a sudden, you've probably got to go, 8-5, 9-4 over the last 13 games of the season. It's going to be a struggle to do that. And so to me, it was always going to be an uphill battle, but this is just so disappointing. And I feel so bad for Arkansas fans because I know how much excitement was going into this season. And I think the disappointing part was, like I said, is I do feel like this was a moment on the schedule where you could get right if you were just healthy and had everybody going in the same direction. Yes, Missouri was bad, but you look at Georgia, you look at Oklahoma, Georgia's coming off back-to-back losses over the last couple games. I know I've been critical of Mike White. I think he's done a pretty good job this year, but that's also a team that I think is going to, Water's going to find its level with that team throughout SEC play. Oklahoma's another one. Porter Moser historically has been really good out of conference. You get into conference play, he struggles. Well, that team's struggling, sitting at 1-4 in SEC play. And so it just felt like, okay, can you get these 2 wins, get some sort of momentum going into the Kentucky game, not this coming Saturday, but the following one. And now it's like, man, all that momentum is lost. If you're looking for any sort of silver lining, the depth is going to be an issue. But I will say some of those players that are struggling, now you're going to have no choice but to play them and play through them. Nelly Davis, listen, if you were lacking confidence, well, guess what? You got to take all the shots now. You got to take all, it's your time. And so if you miss a shot, just play through it, because we need you to play like 38 minutes now, 37 minutes now, 40 minutes per game, because there's really, again, no wiggle room with the rest of this team. I do think in some ways, listen, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that losing a freshman All-American who's probably going to be a top 25 first-round type draft pick, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's a best-case scenario. I will say I do think roles become much more defined. DJ Wagner is now your lead guard. By the way, I was talking to a buddy of mine who, follows college hoops, remembers DJ Wagner from last year at Kentucky. And I said, I think DJ Wagner's actually played very well this year. He's been one of the few bright spots for Arkansas. Well, now the ball's back in your hands. It's go time. Take care of it, DJ Wagner. Nelly Davis, you got to play through your mistakes. You got to play through whatever. If you miss a shot, don't put your head down because you ain't coming out. And then Adu Thiero's got to keep playing the way he has. Jonas Adu's obviously got to continue to contribute, and you got to hope to get something from Trevin Brazil, from Big Z, whatever. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that everything is hunky-dory, because it isn't. Arkansas actually plays in just a few hours from now, as you can see on the screen, 9 p.m. Eastern. So you hope they can get right at home against Georgia. I hate to say it. I don't think the crowd's going to be very good. They've been struggling with crowds there at Bud Walton Arena here all season long. I know there's frustration with the fan base about this team and about this, really about the entire athletic department with Hunter Yurachek, et cetera. But I just bring it up because I don't know how you can't be disappointed. And I do feel so bad for this team, and I do feel bad for this entire fan base. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. We are going to come back. When we come back, let's go ahead and get into the big story from Tuesday night outside of Boogie Fland. It is, of course, Dan Hurley. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, did he get caught saying something on camera that maybe he shouldn't have said. Maybe get to a question or two from you, and then we got to talk Dan Hurley. We'll be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. More Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So Boogie Fland was one of the big pieces of news from Tuesday night in college hoops. But there was certainly another involving a guy that can't seem to keep himself out of the headlines in the world of college basketball. And that is none other than the head coach of my alma mater, the University of Connecticut. Dan Hurley, that's right. He goes on another rant. Let's go ahead and discuss it. First of all, if you missed it, UConn played Butler on Tuesday night. I'll be totally transparent. Sort of a forgettable game. You know, UConn is in a weird spot. Their best player, Liam McNeely, is hurt, out with an ankle injury. He should be back soon. UConn's not playing particularly well right now, and unfortunately, this game kind of followed a pattern that has been frustrating for UConn fans, and I'm not going to defend the way that they're playing. Jumped out to a big lead, couldn't maintain it, blew a big lead, and then had to survive in overtime, and it's a game that, like, if you lose that game, like, I'm not saying UConn's on the bubble or anything, but it was just a game they needed to win. They lost at home to Creighton on Saturday. We talked about that on Sunday's show. The fact that there was some very questionable officiating late when the referees preemptively called a foul on the floor when it was frankly should have been a shooting foul. But I bring it up because UConn survives against Butler. And if that was the story, I don't know that we'd be talking about an okay but not great UConn team right now that's waiting for its best player to come back. I don't know that we'd be talking about it today, okay? But we do have to talk about it because we had yet another issue between Dan Hurley and the refs. And Dan Hurley certainly has had his moments. I've defended him, but I also said, look, the game in Maui against Memphis, his tirade cost UConn the game against Memphis. Like, it was a game where it was in overtime. They were in control. He gets a technical, whatever, momentum swings to Memphis. They lose that game, okay? So we've talked about all this. But there was yet another twist on Tuesday night. The cameras on FS1. They caught Dan Hurley talking to one of the officials, and he was chirping at him and whatever. And they caught him saying, though, is what made headlines on Tuesday night and what caught everybody's attention, and it was certainly interesting. I will paraphrase because I want to be respectful of people that have children in the car, maybe if you're listening, or children around you. But the cameras caught Dan Hurley saying some version of the following to a ref as the ref walked away from him. Quote, and this is a loose quote because none of us are lip readers, but it looked like he said, quote, "Don't turn your back on me. I'm the best coach in the effing sport." Okay. And so listen, I'll be honest. UConn alum, UConn fan, defended Dan Hurley by and large over the last, whatever. Every time he has a dust up with the refs, I kind of defend him. This was one, though, when I saw it in real time, I kind of just rolled my eyes. I said, "Coach, come on, man. Don't say stuff like that. You're better than that. We know you're great at what you do. 2-time national champion. You're going to be in the Hall of Fame alongside your dad someday. You don't have to say stuff like that. And you can make your point across without looking and sounding the way that you do, because that's kind of an indefensible quote, okay?" But then I thought it was interesting because Dan Hurley at the podium after the game, he had some very interesting things to say about why he said it, but also just the state of refereeing and really with UConn specifically as it pertains to UConn and how the games are refereed. And I know last year, I certainly myself made headlines for some of my commentary about refereeing in college basketball, specifically like the foul discrepancy with Zach Edey. That was certainly a topic a year ago. But I thought that Dan Hurley made some very interesting points. And so what we're going to do, we're going to play 2 different sound bites from his press conference, because really what this stems from is, in my opinion, 3 issues, 2 of which will be discussed in the audio. And then the third one, which I don't even have audio for, but I'm just going to paraphrase for you. One, I do think that Dan Hurley references the fact that, I basically said what you think I said, but my whole thing is I am frustrated with the fouls and the manner in which games are called. When UConn is playing. So that is the first sound. I think the second sound is interesting as well. Actually, I take that back. The first sound will be kind of him just addressing it. The second sound will be how the games are refereed, and then I'll just tell you about the third sound, because he basically said, look, if refs have it out for me, I sort of understand it. But it is kind of a conflict of interest of what they're supposed to be calling this game unbiasedly. And if they don't like me, then that's kind of an issue. But I'll tell you what, we'll cover all of it. But producer Matt, play the first sound when Dan Hurley was asked specifically, "Hey, did you say to the ref what we think you may have said to that ref?"
I think TV got you saying something like, "Don't turn your back on me. I'm the best coach." And
did I say that? Yeah. I mean, I know we I'm going to sound like an asshole here. So the TV likes me, camera. I bet you I'm going to have the GAs. I'll release it to the media too. What was the game on today? It was on FS1. I just wish they'd put the camera on the other coach more. Obviously I had a moment with Coach Dad Mata today, because he was so far out of the box that I figure I would just go over and have a powwow with him and Pat, but I just wish they would show these other coaches losing their minds at the officials in other Big East games that I'm coaching, where I look going into a timeout when I'm not talking to officials. I see the other coaches as demonstrative as I am. But, the camera, obviously, I've created this for myself. I'm not no victim, but I just wish that they would not have the camera on me 90% of the time, unless they feel like it's driving ratings, and more assholes on Twitter that could put clips of me from a game and say, "Yeah, look how big of a monster he is. He's yelling at."
So that was the first piece of Dan Hurley sound. We'll get to the second one in just a minute, but I do think it's kind of worth noting, I hate to say it, kind of do think he has a point. And maybe these are my UConn glasses coming on. But listen, first of all, I respect that he didn't deny it. He didn't say, "Oh, I never said that." He's like, no, I did say that. But I think where his frustration came in is guys, why am I the only one that has a camera on me? And we could sit here and pretend that, no, nobody else acts like him and blah, 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 this and that. This is all I'll tell you. What I could tell you is I watch these games every single night. I see coaches swearing at refs every single night. I've used the example before, but I was at Duke-Kansas game in Vegas around Thanksgiving time, and the big screen caught Bill Self telling a ref, You don't know what the F you're doing. You effing suck at your job. Now, he wasn't yelling and screaming, and his assistants didn't have to pull it off of him, but it was very obvious what he said, and it wasn't a good look. By the way, Tom Izzo, see him yelling at the refs plenty. Brad Underwood, see him yelling at the refs plenty. Sean Miller, Ed Cooley, Rick Pitino. And so I think Dan Hurley does have kind of like, let me ask you this, and you can get in the chat and tell me if you agree or disagree. I do think he kind of has a point, though. You can fight me on it. You can argue me on it. You can say he's the only one that does it. I totally disagree. I think he's actually one of the many that does it, but he's the only one that people care about, right? Like, no disrespect. Ed Cooley yells at refs all the time. Nobody cares. Was the coach of Providence. Now he's the coach of Georgetown. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Sean Miller. Love Sean Miller. Had him on this show. Great guy. He's at Xavier. They're a fringe NCAA tournament team. When he screams at a ref, nobody really cares. And so, yes, I do think Dan Hurley has a point that, like, yes, you're going to catch me more because the cameras are always on me. Listen, maybe I'm being biased, whatever, but I watched that whole game. Did not see very much of Thad Matta on the big screen because, again, people don't care about Thad Matta. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. And people aren't going to get upset if he's yelling at an official. What I'll also say, though, is I think, because people are sitting there saying, oh, Dan Hurley's out of control. But there is a reason why he is frustrated. And I'll set up this sound here, and we'll get to it in just a second. But why he is frustrated, and I'll have some facts to back this up after we listen to him. He's frustrated because, frankly, I think he feels like his team is getting a bum whistle, okay? And essentially what you need to know, and he'll explain it better in the audio, is that his argument is, look, we play a very unique style. We have a lot of off-the-ball movement and cutting and this and that. And you could fight me and you could argue, say every team does it. Ask a coach. Most teams don't do it to the level that UConn does it. And so basically where Dan Hurley's frustration is like, wait a second now. You're calling us for every ticky-tack foul either on the ball or at the rim, and we're getting held on every single possession. You know, I talked to my buddy Mark Zanetto from Locked On UConn earlier in the day, and he kind of analogized. I think it's a good analogy. Remember like the Legion of Boom, the Legion of Boom football team, the Legion of Boom, Seattle Seahawks defensive backfield, and how basically like they'd hold you on every play because they knew the refs couldn't call it. By the way, that's how kind of Pitino plays his defense. Pitino's like, we're going to commit a foul on every single play, and we're going to put it on the refs, and eventually the refs aren't going to call it every single time. And so basically that's what Dan Hurley is saying. He's like, we're getting held on every single play. Producer Matt, go ahead, play the second piece of sound.
These guys like Tony, these guys are all strong referees. It's just like, somebody, and just coming into these games, it's how we play is, it's there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of different screening. We literally couldn't even get catches today because we were just getting grabbed and held before we could even, and it's just, but then any type of contact on a drive or it was a foul. That's
interesting. Wonder how many of you knew that Dan Hurley actually complimented the officials after the game, said that they do a good job, but also expressed frustration. By the way, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, make sure you're following our Torres on UConn page for all things UConn. That's on Twitter, by the way. So listen, what Dan Hurley's saying is accurate, and it's not even my opinion. UConn fans have been frustrated with the whistle that UConn has been getting all season long, okay? And I've tried to ignore it. I hate when teams struggle or teams lose and fans blame the referees. But I will say, the last couple games, it has sort of gotten out of control, okay? So let's go to Tuesday night. Butler, Dan Hurley's frustrated. If you had to take a guess, just think about these two teams. UConn has these big, athletic NBA dudes all across the board. No disrespect, Butler does not. Butler doesn't have a single guy that can beat you off the dribble. The kid Telfort played really well, but he's kind of a small ball four that just kind of bullies you. If you had to take a guess off the top of your head, what would you guess the foul discrepancy is in this game? What would you guess Dan Hurley's so frustrated about? Well, guess what? Butler shot twice as many foul shots as UConn in this game. 28 foul shots in a Big East road game at UConn's venue. UConn shoots 14. By the way, this isn't a standalone thing. Saturday against Creighton at home. Now, Creighton is statistically fouls less than anybody in college basketball, so that's kind of worth noting. But take a guess. At home, Creighton, what do you think the foul discrepancy was? Creighton shot 3 times as many foul shots as UConn. They shot 15. UConn shoots just 5. So I'm not great at math, but if the one team shot 28, the other team shoots 15, that's 43 over 2 games at home, by the way. At home. 2 games at home. And UConn shoots 5 and 14, that's 19. So that's over a 2-to-1 differential in 2 home games. And so listen, you can sit here and yell and scream about Hurley, and he's the worst thing, he's the worst this, he's the worst that. But first of all, wouldn't you want your coach to do the same? I know you would, because guess what? I see all you fans in my comments every time your team loses. And every time your team loses, all I hear is, my team got screwed by the refs. We stink. Why do the refs have it out for us? Listen, I can pull up the comments. I know you guys, and that's okay. You're a fan. You should be critical of the refs. You should be mad when you don't get the favorable whistle. But guess what? Not every fan base complains about it. But how often do you see over a 2-game homestand, a home team, and by the way, in a league where, like, this isn't Eastern Kentucky playing UConn or Eastern Kentucky playing Kentucky. Like, this isn't a team where there is a clear size physicality differential. No. Like, actually, it's the exact opposite. Like, UConn is the bigger, more athletic team, and you could argue, okay, maybe they should get a few more fouls called because they play so physically, but twice as many at home doesn't even make sense. And so, yes, like, again, I know I was the Zach Edey foul discrepancy guy, but when you're getting twice as many, the opponent's getting twice as many shots as you, in some cases 3 times as many shots as you at home, you're allowed to be frustrated. Now, did I love the don't turn your back on me, I'm the best effing coach in college basketball? Did not love that. But I would also counter by saying that I'm going to defend Dan Hurley, because I just think I'd be frustrated too. And what he's basically saying is like, look, and by the way, there's yet another clip where there's 2 different things he says. One, he says, like, we commit fouls too. And he went through them. He said, Jaden Ross did this. I hated it. Jalen Stewart committed this dumb foul. I was mad at him. He didn't acknowledge that UConn doesn't commit fouls. He's just saying, like, can we get it a little bit evenly? And I think the last piece of sound that we didn't pull either was there was an interesting quote that he said. It was only about 20 seconds where he basically also, like, insinuated, like, if these refs have it out for me, that's an issue. Like, if you don't like me personally, that's fine. But when you walk between those lines, you have to be unbiased and call the game fairly. And if not, that is an integrity of the game issue. And it stems from, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but, like, I'm pretty sure Jeff Goodman, who I respect. Jeff, I'm not being critical of you at all, but he said something on one of his shows about, refs have told me that they're going to keep a close eye on Dan Hurley this year. They're not letting him get away with stuff that he got away with in the past. Well, if refs are going in with a preconceived bias, then, like, Dan Hurley absolutely has the right to be frustrated. So all I'm saying is that, I understand why, if you're not a UConn fan, you're sitting there saying, like, oh, of course Torres is like, I think what he said, when you actually listen to his complaints, is justified. Again, did not love saying I'm the best coach in college basketball, whatever he said. But he also said, hey, we're putting together a video, and I think when you guys see it, you're going to understand why we're so frustrated. By the way, listen, I don't talk much NBA because it's the NBA, who cares? But they've put in freedom of movement rules for this exact reason. You can't just hold people when they're trying to cut off the ball, and that's Dan Hurley's biggest complaint. Lastly, let me say this, then we'll get to some other stuff, is I will add, I do think seeing the reaction by fans of non-UConn fans to this, it's clear to me, and I think it was pretty obvious, but Dan Hurley is officially the villain of college basketball. And lastly, I think that's a good thing. I'll be honest, we've been looking for a villain since Coach K retired, and we always talk about, what is going to inspire people and get people fired up during the regular season. Well, this clearly has, if you are not a UConn fan, I think, listen, if you just see that viral moment, you understand, you think you think it's not good. But I think the counter to that is, if you actually listen to what he says, if you actually just look at the facts, you can see why Dan Hurley is frustrated. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take one more break. We're going to come back. When we do, I want to talk about some of the other stuff from Tuesday night. Louisville might be the best story in college basketball. Also, 5-star Caleb Wilson commits on Thursday. I'll make my final official pick. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more. all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. More Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rensselaer Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. Do want to get to Louisville in half a second. I do want to address one quick thing from the comments section. Let's see here. Rich Allensworth, the golfing lender. Don't really know much about golf lending. He says, I like you, Torres, but if a coach has a national championship, you get a little too friendly with them. Kind of makes me uncomfortable. Okay, Rich. Let's have this conversation. What coaches have I had on that have won national champion? I've never had Dan Hurley on this show. I've let my alma mater know I'm a little bit frustrated with their inability to help me out with that. Never had Dan Hurley on this show. I've actually never talked to Dan Hurley. Believe it or not, as crazy as it sounds, it's my alma mater. I think I have one of the biggest college basketball platforms, certainly in digital media. So, I mean, I've had Scott Drew on this show. I don't think I'm that friendly with Scott Drew. Don't talk about Baylor very much. I actually had Pitino on this show about 5-6 years ago. Not 5-6, like whenever he was out of coaching, right before Iona, I had him on. So I don't know. I don't think I'm being friendly with Dan Hurley by defending him. I think all you got to do is listen to the audio. And like I said, I thought it was kind of cringy in my opinion. I thought it was kind of cringy, to be honest. The whole the whole idea of I'm the best coach in college like it was cringy. But I also, when you're at home, and over a 2-game homestand, there's a 2-to-1 foul discrepancy. Like every coach in America would complain about that. Every fan base in America would complain about that. So I stand by what I said. You know what else I said? I said some nice things about Louisville on Tuesday night. So let's go ahead and dive into those. Tuesday night college hoops. You know, there were no like major, I don't think there were major upsets that I can think of. There was one game though that I absolutely want to talk about. And to me, it's an awesome story. It's a fun story. And I'm really excited to talk about it. And it is the Louisville Cardinals. Okay. So Louisville, if you remember, listen, the coaching carousel happened and it was crazy last year. And I think because of, John Calipari to Arkansas, Mark Pope to Kentucky, one that kind of got lost in the shuffle was Pat Kelsey to Louisville. And admittedly, at the time, I liked the hire, thought he'd be really good. Recruiting starts in the portal and high school recruiting. And I really liked the roster that he put together. By the end of the summer, I said, look, and by the way, you could go back into the archives. We have the off-season grades that we did in June of last year. I said, I think Louisville, I think they could be like a fringe top 25 team. And I did say, I think there's an argument they're the third best team in the ACC behind Duke and Carolina. At the time I said, I like Wake Forest, whatever. But I said, I think they're like a top 5 ACC team. So I bring it up because I liked the Pat Kelsey hire. I liked what he did in the offseason, but I got to call a spade a spade. I did not think that he was capable of doing what he is doing now, because on Tuesday night, Louisville went to SMU, and it's worth noting, SMU is a real team now. SMU, of course, is in the ACC now. They're coached by Andy Enfield, who, coached at USC forever. And, listen, they're a good team. Joe Lunardi had them as the first 4 out of his most recent bracketology. So they're like an NCAA tournament caliber team. Well, Louisville made them look like a JV team because the final score, this one 98-73, a 25-point win. But it wasn't only a 25-point win. They were up by 23 on the road at the half against SMU. They put up 50 in the first half. They're up 23. They end up winning by 25. That's right, 25 points. And I just got to say this. I got to be honest. So with this win, this is an important stat here. Louisville has now won 9 straight games. Why that is important, why that is relevant, why that matters. They won all of 8 games a year ago. They have now won 9 straight. They're 15-5. And if the ACC tournament started today, they'd be in second. They'd be the number 2 seed at the ACC tournament. Their only loss all season long in the ACC was to Duke at home in a game that they were competitive as hell. And I'll tell you what, I'm just going to say it. I think Louisville is the best story in all of college basketball right now. And I also think if I had a vote today, and it's early, it's only January 22nd, I would have Pat Kelsey as my national coach of the year. All right, so let's go ahead and dig into this one. First of all, in terms of this game, listen, Louisville's been good all year, but they just jumped the SMU Mustangs. Okay, like I said, they were up by 23 at the half. They win by 25. But what's impressive about this run is that they're doing it in a league that isn't very good in the ACC. But again, 15-5, 8-1 in the ACC. What's crazy is of the few teams that are actually good in the ACC, Louisville is basically beating all of them except for Duke, okay? So right now, Joe Lunardi has 5 teams projected in the ACC, in the NCAA tournament from the ACC. Louisville's one. North Carolina is another. Duke is another. We've just talked about Duke. The other 3 are Pitt, Clemson, and North Carolina. SMU in the first 4 out. So basically 6 teams that are right in tournament contention. Of those 6 teams, take out Duke, best team in the league. Take out Louisville. They've actually already beaten the other 4 teams in the league. Beat Pitt on the road, beat SMU on the road, beat Clemson on the road, and beat North Carolina at home earlier in the year. And so this is a team that, yes, I understand that the ACC is not great. What I also understand is that of the legitimately good teams in this league, Louisville has beaten all of them, okay, except for Duke. And so you look at this team, 15-5 overall, 7-1, 8-1 in the ACC, whatever it is. And I love what they're doing. I think what the other relevant part in this is that this is a team that is doing it at way less than 100%, okay? We've talked about Louisville before. Kayshawn Pryor. I call him a big guy. He's not a traditional big. Like, he's not a back-to-the-basket, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar type, but he was kind of their starting center, 5 out, whatever. He was a really good player. He gets hurt in the Atlantis tournament. He has not played since November. Corin Johnson was expected to be a big-time contributor, transfer from Washington. He played a grand total of 2 games before suffering a season-ending injury. Who's the other one? Traore. I call him Abubakar. He goes by something else right now. I always knew him as Abubakar Traore. He is a player that missed like 10 games right in the start of the season. He's back now, but he missed a bunch of time. So not only is Louisville 15-5, not only are they on a 9-game win streak after winning a total of 8 games last year, but they're doing it at less than 100%. It's not like Pat Kelsey has the fully loaded clip here and he's just destroying everybody in the league. He's doing it with, kind of piecing things together. And you know what else actually stands out watching him? Some of his best players are players that he brought from Charleston. Rain Smith, 30 points on 10 3-pointers made on Tuesday night. That sounds like that sounds like a video game. Oh, I'm playing NCAA 25 and my guy just got hot. Like what was the old game? The arcade game. He's on fire. Like you play 2-on-2. It'd be like Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning on the Charlotte Hornets. It was NBA Jam. Thank you, producer Matt. I appreciate you. But yeah, watching that game, that's what it's like. He's on fire. Like 10 threes from a dude that was playing at Charleston last year. James Scott, by the way, also came from Charleston. Didn't even play a ton there last year. Has scored double figures in 4 of the last 5 games, and they've needed him to because, again, he's playing those minutes that were supposed to go to Kayshawn Pryor. By the way, Ali Khalifa, who we talked about in the portal, played for Mark Pope at BYU last year. He's been out for the year as well. And so you look at this story, and to me, it's absolutely incredible. It's the best story in college basketball, and I'll take it a step further. If I had a vote today for National Player of the Year, or National Coach of the Year, I would give it to Pat Kelsey. And I know what's going to happen. BBN's going to say, oh my goodness, Mark Pope has 5 wins against ranked teams. Mark Pope's been great. This isn't to tear down Mark Pope. This isn't to tear down Bruce Pearl, who I think is, even though they were picked to finish second in the SEC, that he should be in the National Coach of the Year conversation. but it's hard for me to give it to anyone other than Pat Kelsey because of what he inherited. I understand that Mark Pope had 0 players on the roster when he got there, okay? But he also inherited a brand that was still pretty strong, a brand coming off of a number 2 seed at the SEC tournament. Kentucky finished second in the SEC last year, number 2 in the SEC, and a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, okay? Kentucky was still a great brand that was very attractive. Louisville was a toxic brand thanks to Kenny Payne. And I love Kenny Payne, no disrespect, whatever. I didn't hate the hire at Arkansas, but he was not a good basketball coach. He was not a good head coach. I think we can all agree on that. 4-28 2 years ago, 8-24 last year. So all you got to do is look at what Pat Kelsey inherited. An ACC program which won a grand total of 12 games the last 2 years. And he's already at 15-5 overall, 8-1 now in the ACC, excuse me. And man, oh man, are they playing good basketball. I think this is a great story. By the way, I'm happy for Louisville fans. I know in the past, Louisville fans haven't always liked Torres, think that I don't like your program. No, but I've been critical when I have to be. Kenny Payne was not a good coach, and I defended the Kenny Payne hire. Chris Mack, whatever. But this guy's awesome. Pat Kelsey's awesome. You got yourself a heck of a head coach. By the way, last loss for Louisville was a game at Rupp Arena where they competed their butts off at way less than 100%. I mean, how about this? I mean, look at their last 3 losses. Ole Miss is a really good team ranked in the top 25. Duke is obviously a very good team. They're running away with the ACC. And then also Kentucky at Kentucky. And by the way, you played your butts off in that Kentucky game. Chucky Hepburn was unbelievable in that game. So I think that Louisville is as good of a story as there is in college basketball. I would give Pat Kelsey the coach of the year. And it's just cool that this is a team that, listen, barring something shocking, is going to make the NCAA tournament. I see on the bottom of the screen, I was not even aware of this, Louisville projected to win every remaining game on their schedule. I guess all but 2. So they would finish 17-3 in the ACC. They're sitting at 8-1 now. So not great at math, but that would be 9-2 over the course of their final 11 games. And listen, you can talk about the ACC being down, but again, they've already beaten most of the best teams in the ACC. You look at the rest of their schedule really quick. It looks like, I think Wake could be a tough game, but they'll have a week off before they play Wake. Then you have late in the year, Stanford's playing okay after they just won at North Carolina. There's a lot of winnable games left on this schedule because, again, they've played most of the top half of the ACC so far. So now you get the bottom half, 1 game against Duke, 1 game against Carolina, 1 game against Clemson, and this team could go on a nice little run here to wrap the regular season. Listen, I don't know what the seed number is. I hate doing they could get a this seed or a that seed or whatever. It's like, I just know they're really good, and they should win most of the rest of their games this season. All right, really quickly, let's wrap with one more major topic, and I'll get some of your questions. Producer Matt, I know you're already starring them, but any questions pop up, all that good stuff. But all right, so let's go ahead and wrap. There is one more topic I do want to discuss. It is a topic that we have discussed certainly quite a bit here on the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. That is the recruitment of 5-star forward Caleb Wilson. So we've done 2 or 3 segments on this kid over the course of the last month or so. But I think for people who do not know, and I know you know, 5-star player, one of the top uncommitted players in the high school class of 2025. And it's been an interesting couple weeks in his recruitment. Probably about a month or so ago, cut his list down to 5. At the time, that 5 was North Carolina, Kentucky, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Central Florida, UCF. Then he cut UCF and Tennessee. Final 3 a few days ago became Ohio State, North Carolina, and Kentucky. Well, I bring it up because Caleb Wilson is set to commit on Thursday. And for the first time, I have to admit, I got to take an L. I think I was probably wrong on this one. As listen, as of a week ago, I was still saying I think Kentucky has a slight lead. But let's talk about it because I think over the last week or so, Carolina has taken control. And I think on Thursday, when we're talking about this commitment, I do think Caleb Wilson, no relation to Caleb Williams that I know of, will be a North Carolina Tar Heel. So first of all, Caleb Wilson, the player, I've talked about quite a bit. And I want to talk about what's changed, by the way. I'm going to talk about all of it in a minute. But the player I like, and the player I've explained time and time again, who he is, what he does well, all that. But he's been basically identified as one of the best players in this class dating back to his sophomore year. had a great sophomore year. I think the junior year was kind of up and down, but I bring it up because really the last, I think, let's do some math here, 9 months or so, I think has changed his trajectory in a totally positive way. We talked about it, but he played with the Boozer twins, Cam and Caden Boozer, on the Nike circuit, played at Peach Jam with them. They won a Peach Jam championship. And I think he just showed everything that you kind of want from the new age, big forward in basketball, right? On certain nights he was the star, 20 points, 10 boards, whatever it would be, 22-8, 22-7, whatever. But he's also playing with an All-American Cam Boozer, who, of course, I think everybody knows, but he's going to Duke next year following his father's footsteps, along with his twin brother, Caden Boozer. And, there were nights where Caleb Wilson was a defensive stopper, a wing stopper, a guy that would get you 12 boards and 6 points, but he just showed he can play a lot of different styles. Well, he goes into his senior year, and I think he's, from what I've seen, I haven't seen him much because, I'm covering college basketball here. I don't have a ton of time to go to high school games. But from what I've seen, it feels like he is playing with a different level and a different degree of confidence. Much more confident, much more assertive. He's playing high school ball kind of where he's the star in Atlanta, and he is absolutely playing like a stud here over the last probably 2-3 months since the high school basketball season started. Now, in terms of the recruitment, like I said, over the last couple weeks, I have said that I believed Kentucky is in the lead. I still believed it as of the end of or beginning of last week. But I think as time has gone on, I'm talking to my people in the industry, I'm asking questions, and I was hesitant to kind of flip that unofficial crystal ball to North Carolina, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. My final prediction is, in fact, that he ends up at UNC. And listen, from the UNC perspective, we'll talk about a couple different things. One, first of all, he always liked UNC. So my big thing was about the NIL component of it, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I did say all along, I thought UNC was doing a good job recruiting him. Remember, in the fall, he took both an unofficial and official visit. And so basically, if you're visiting a campus twice in a 1 month, 6 week, 2 month period, whatever it was, like he obviously liked the place. Carolina has a ton to sell. And my big concerns were kind of NIL related. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Carolina as an athletic department, I think they have prioritized football over the last probably 6 to 8 months. Basically realizing, hey, the future of college athletics is in the sport of football, and we need to make sure that our football program is where it needs to be, and we need to put our resources and allocate more resources into that program. That's why they hired Bill Belichick. It's why they fired Mac Brown. And I've said it consistently. It's not they hate Hubert Davis thing. I know Hubert Davis just took another loss the other day, but I think it's really realistically more than that. It's just hey, we have to we have to prepare for the future of college football. We have to make sure our football program is attractive because at some point the ACC is going to break up. At some point, we're going to need to find another home. And we can't just bank on we're North Carolina, we're state school, we're great academic school, whatever. We have to have a product on the football field that matters. And so I've kind of questioned the NIL stuff. But over the last couple of days, I think what's kind of struck me is a few things. One, he always liked the school, like I said. Two, the NIL situation is a little fluid in a positive way, because I think what I underestimated is we have to remember we're going towards revenue sharing in a couple months. For people who don't follow this nerdy stuff, basically as of late April of this year of 2025, schools will be able to pay players directly. And so what's kind of interesting, and I think we saw this a lot in football, is basically the collectives raised all this money, and that's where you were getting paid from before, but also now the schools can pay directly as well. And so with football, what we've seen a lot of in this last portal cycle is you'll sign a deal with the collective will pay you a bunch of money up front, and then the school will take over from there. In other words, listen, I don't have any exact details, but, if you wanted to start, like there was, let me give you an example. There was a report that the star quarterback from Tulane that committed to Duke football. Yes, I'm talking Duke football, Darian Mensah. There was a report that he's going to get $5 million from Duke over the course of the next year. And basically, Duke is going to front load some stuff, give him some money through the collective. And then at that point, after they front load everything, they are going to be able to then pay him directly through the school. And so for North Carolina, I think what they're sitting there saying is, well, we can get you a little bit more because we'll take some from the collective. We'll take care of you up front. I would assume they'll probably start paying him as soon as he signs his letter of intent in late March, early April, whenever that signing period begins. And then the school will take over from there. So we can get you more on the front end from the collective, and then the school will take over on the back end. So that's a lot of what's happening across college sports. And I talked to 2 or 3 people on Monday morning, like, am I missing something? And that was the general sentiment, is there's a lot of money these days between the collectives. There's a lot of money these days between the schools now paying, and what virtually every school in America, I'm positive of this. Everybody's basically double dipping. They're like, we're going to pay you through the collective as much as we can up front, and then we're going to let the school take over. And the school obviously has limitations. Certain amount has to go to certain this, certain that. The collective doesn't have any rules. Collective doesn't have any limitations. So like with AJ DeBonsa at BYU, it's like, I'm just using them as an example, but the collective could pay AJ DeBonsa $5 million, and then he just gets what everybody else is getting on the basketball team from the collective. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying that's happening, but what I am saying is happening is in both football and basketball, basically all of these programs are double dipping, and part of you are getting paid by the collective. And then once the revenue sharing happens in April, now all of a sudden you're getting paid by the school as well. And so when I look at it, I do think that was probably a big factor. They were able to put together a little bit more money than maybe I anticipated. Listen, Caleb Wilson has always liked that school. I think the other thing too, he's going to be a star, right? Is that, I think the relationships with the Kentucky guys, I thought was maybe a little bit more important than it was. I still think it's important. Like, I think a Caden Lewis was still, the Kentucky commit was still tweeting at him as of a few days ago. But at the same time, I think, the money probably talks a little bit. I think Kentucky's like, we'll allocate our NIL resources in other places. And I think Caleb Wilson's like, I can go there and be a star, because as we talked about the other day, Ian Jackson's probably going pro after this year. Drake Powell's probably going pro after this year. RJ Davis graduates. Elliot Cadeau will probably be back, but there will be plenty of shots to go around for Caleb Wilson. So that to me is the latest. I do think it's probably going to be North Carolina. We'll have full reaction when it happens, but really, really, really good player. Really excited. I think it'll be big for listen, I'll say this. Carolina kind of needs this. We did the whole Hubert Davis segment on Saturday after they lost to Stanford. They lost again on Tuesday night at Wake Forest. And Hubert Davis right now needs some positive, energy right now, because right now they're 12-8. I think they're on the verge of potentially missing the NCAA tournament for a second time in 3 years. Caleb Wilson might be the piece that ends up saving his job if he can close this deal, because right now there ain't a lot of positivity around North Carolina. But I don't want to be negative. I want to give credit where it's due. Carolina, like I said, I do believe, and maybe I'm dead wrong. I don't think I am. I believe that Kentucky led for the majority of this recruitment. I think he always liked Carolina, and I think Carolina has made up ground. All right, really quickly before we get out of here, producer Matt, do we have any interesting questions on any of the topics? It could be UConn, it could be Arkansas, it could be whatever. Okay, let me see here. Pat Kelsey is the reaper that benefits of Payne's great program. Kentucky farmer, I assume this is the most sarcastic tweet that has comment that has ever been sent in. I think he just benefits from Kenny Payne being really bad. But just because Kenny Payne was really bad, it didn't guarantee that he was going to be really good. And I think even for Louisville fans, I think Louisville fans would have been happy with, hey, can we finish in 7th in the ACC and be a bubble team? I think that's what Louisville fans were hoping for coming into the year. And instead they're like, whoa, we're in 2nd place. We're awesome. We're fun to watch. We win games. We blow people out. Shout out to Pat Kelsey, man. He's been really, really, really good. What else we got? All right. Great question. Great comment, really. Louisville's coach is doing really well. This is obviously from a Kentucky fan, and that's good for the UK rivalry. Just hope there aren't many head-to-head recruiting wars with Kentucky. We'll see. Obviously, look, it's interesting. Louisville's an Adidas school. Kentucky's a Nike school. They're going to cross paths. I thought it was kind of interesting, though. They really doesn't feel like they really prioritize the same guys in recruiting this 2025 cycle. They got Mikael Brown, who's like a top 7-8 prospect. He was the highest rated recruit they've gotten in like 20 years. But it wasn't a guy that, Kentucky had him on campus, but I think they prioritized a Caden Lewis. I don't think a Caden Lewis really considered Louisville. But I just bring it up because so far, not really. I think it'll be interesting in the portal as well, because I think what we got to remember about this year in the portal, because the 5th-year rule is out, there's going to be less talent in the portal. Now, you could argue a place like Kentucky isn't going to need a ton of pieces because they're going to have a 3-man plus recruiting class, plus a couple guys coming back. But I'll be curious to see how much they actually do go head-to-head, because those are 2 dynamic, youngish head coaches. They're in their 50s, so they're not, Todd Golden, who's like 36 or whatever, but two youngish head coaches. But I think Louisville's in really good hands. And I'll say this too really quick. I think the ACC kind of needs Louisville to be good because, that league has been so down for so many years. And it's like, I don't know how many years they just need somebody besides Carolina and Duke to actually be competitive. Louisville has gotten their right coach. And I think at the very least with him, they will absolutely be competitive. What else we got, Matt? All right, we're talking about Boogie Fland. You never know with Cal's teams. He sticks with a few of his dudes. He won't bench no matter what, and a couple that he won't play because he keeps them in the doghouse. It may be that he'll have to give somebody a chance, and it works. This is obviously in reference to the Boogie Fland injury. I think there's probably something to that. All right, I'll tell you what. Producer Matt, I'll be honest. I forgot that my computer's not plugged in right now. So I think it's probably best we just get out of here before this feed dies right in the middle of the show. Do me a quick favor. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, make sure to do so. New clips, new videos going up every single day. Appreciate Cauley Puffs and their support of the Aaron Torres Pod. And here's the good news. We'll be back on Thursday to react to everything that happened on Wednesday night, preview the weekend, talk Caleb Wilson. So we got plenty to talk about tomorrow's show. Same time, by the way, 2 p.m. Eastern or so, maybe a little bit earlier. Shout out to Tor Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. We'll try to get to some more questions tomorrow, but we got to get out of here today. Appreciate your support of the Aaron Torres Pod. We will be back